I think I want to start off this weekend's Redline Nova update before I've actually done anything at all to the car. And I just got home and I've got all kinds of boxes that have come with all kinds of parts and tools, and I'm not even sure what, lots of stuff for the car. And I just absolutely love that it pisses my wife off that I get in lots of good stuff and she doesn't get anything in the mailbox, but it's just loaded with fun things for me. It's like Christmas for a grown-ass man. So, Robin, you're a damn hater, and I got cool stuff to open. Hell yeah. Alrighty, I got all of these boxes opened, and it looks like the good folks of Dakota Digital have sent me one of their instrument clusters for my car. I hadn't pulled it out of the wrapper yet, but we about to have a look at it for the first time. Let's see if I can hold this thing with my chin. Okay, here we go. Ooh. Man, that is going to look fantastic in the car. You can pick the colors that everything lights up inside the car. You've also got a little digital readout right here in the middle that'll, tell you things like an oil pressure light. That's the biggest reason I wanted this upgraded set of gauges, is because it has an oil pressure indicator light that will come on in that little digital display there in case, you lose oil pressure. So, really, really nice set of gauges from the folks at Dakota Digital. Awesome. I'm not doing any kind of a full review just yet on the Dakota Digital gauges for the car. At this point, I don't really have any experience with these things. I don't even have a car to connect them to. I am going to put a link down in the description to Dakota Digital's website so you can check them out, see if they've got the gauges that you want for your car. Everything looks fantastic, but I got to dive into this a lot deeper in the coming weeks before I can really have any really good info and content to tell you. All I can tell you on the front end is everything looks fantastic. One of the other items that came in for the car was a stainless steel 3-inch exhaust system from the folks at Speed Engineering with an X-pipe. I've unfortunately just come to the realization I'm not going to be able to use it. I'm going to have to send it back. At the end of the day, I just don't have enough space in this car. Because my exhausts are going to exit through the rocker over here, all of a sudden you have just way less space to try and jam everything, such as a 14-inch long muffler, and in my case, a set of, electric exhaust, cutouts. And what I've come to realize here is if I move my X-pipe as far backward as it can go, which basically brings it right up here to this cross brace, as close as it can get, what happens is it's just too close up here on my transmission cross member, and as a result it will run underneath the cross member and end up being just substantially too low to the ground. Right now, my lowest point on the car to the ground is the cross member that you can see right there. There it is right there. It's going to sit about 4.5 inches off the ground, so if I run off and put the exhaust system here running under the transmission cross member, that thing's going to be, under 4 inches off of the pavement, which is just not acceptable. It's going to get destroyed for sure on the very first speed bump. So I'm going to have to send this thing back and probably end up running an H-pipe, which I didn't want to do, but it kind of is what it is. I am, however, okay with sending this exhaust system back, and let me show you why. Reason number one, you can tighten their little clamps right here just as tight as your little DeWalt impact will get it, and at the end of the day, you can grab this thing and still turn it, so it's not tight. They've basically expanded this joint too large to the point to where this clamp will not clamp it down nice and tight, so that's kind of a disappointment. Reason number two, check out the welds here, the stainless steel welds. They look good, right? Exactly, they look good on the outside. What a lot of folks don't know is in order to weld stainless steel properly, you have to back purge the system, which means capping off the ends with tape and filling the inside of this thing with argon gas. That way the back side of the weld is protected. Have a look up inside here. Can you see? There. You can kind of get an idea right there. The insides of the welds are just terrible. really needs to be ground down with like a long belt sander inside of there at this point. Those are not only weak welds, they're going to cause you to lose some performance, not a lot, but some, and you know, it's just it's disappointing. I wanted to take a brief moment and show everybody the remarkable amount of preparation that goes into trying to do this stuff. I previously made my first attempt at a stainless steel exhaust tip for this car, and I learned very, very quickly that I knew nothing about TIG welding stainless. Go figure, this was my first attempt ever. And so I began to use kind of this test piece here to try and learn about deformation as a result of heat on stainless. And I think I've finally figured it out to where I'm going to be able to make a usable part this morning, I hope. Let me turn the camera around. I want to show you something. Okay, so here I'm trying to make my first usable stainless steel exhaust tip, and I just want to show you something. I have this great big piece of steel, 1/4 inch thick, that runs underneath it, and the reason for that piece is to take the heat out of the material as I start welding it here, as well as stop it from just falling in, because it'll get so hot right there that it'll start falling in. This piece right here will then start pulling up that away. So I've clamped this thing at both ends to this piece, as well as put a C-clamp that clamps it from the opposite side, all in the hopes that when I go to try and weld this right here, that it doesn't deform because of the heat. It's just a remarkable amount of preparation that goes into trying to make something out of stainless steel sheet metal. It's really tough. Okay, so I've started welding it, and it's coming along okay. And look at this. Just like I was talking about. See that? Heat deflection. I'm going to have to try and hammer and dolly that out, and then that's probably going to be the rear of my exhaust tip. I got to do better on the other end, or I'm going to have another paperweight. Alrighty, I am glad to report that my first attempt at a stainless steel exhaust tip taught me a lot about what you can and cannot do, and as a result of that, my second attempt at a stainless steel exhaust tip really came out fantastic. I'm very pleased with it. Here's kind of a conundrum that I've got, and by the way, just for a second, I want to put this picture up on your screen. Have a look at the number of clamps on this thing. It took a remarkable amount of clamps to hold this thing together so that at the end of the day it wouldn't distort like crazy. So here's my conundrum. My exhausts are going to exit through my rocker just like you see, like that, you know, like a race car. I have decided that what I intend to do to keep that exhaust tip from bouncing around and doing that while you're traveling down the road, as well as you know, dissipating all the heat through the exhaust and into the rocker, that the way I'm going to do that is with black header wrap, exhaust header wrap. And so basically what I'm going to look to do here is wrap this thing about it with 1/8 of an inch or so that it goes up inside there, takes up that space, stops it from clanking around, and, you know, keeps it from destroying the paint, or at least so I hope. Granted, we're not putting a high-end paint job on this car, so even if it does mess up the paint a little bit, it's not the end of the world. This thing is never intended supposed to look pretty. So anyways, my question, how do you think I secure that header wrap material to my exhaust tip? I'm curious what you guys think. Put it down in the comments if you've got an idea for what you think might work well. My initial thought is to, like, first put a couple very small rivets in place to hold it, and then wrap it, and at that point get it to hold itself in place using some of that high temperature 500 degree dual part Gorilla Glue. That's a guess. I think I'm going to do like a trial first, you know, and see what happens on a piece of exhaust on a real car. But anyways, that's what I got. Took me about 4 hours to make that exhaust tip, so I got to make another one. I can't believe how much time that stuff takes. At the beginning of this video, I showed you that I had all kinds of new stuff that had come in, right? One of the items that I had come in recently was a Jegs fuel cell. Little word to the wise, do something that I didn't do when I first got this thing. If you order one of these things, pull off the little red caps off of everywhere. You have flanges that do the actual sealing. This thing sat on my rack for probably a month before I finally pulled off one of those red caps and realized that the fuel cell had been dropped in shipping and that there was a flat spot on the flare, and as a result it was not going to seal. It's a good thing that I noticed this had happened, because had I just waited and waited and waited until it was time to actually connect fuel lines and crank up the car, my return period would have been long gone and I couldn't have returned a damaged fuel cell. So word to the wise, check those rubber, actually little plastic caps if you get one of these things in. On to some of the other stuff that came in. I want to let you know that when I took my engine harness off of my car, this is the old engine harness, I knew that I wanted to get a new engine harness for the car, because the old one was, very, very dirty, old-looking harness, but more importantly, it wasn't necessarily the right harness for my car, because you had all sorts of connectors everywhere that you didn't need that were for a Camaro. I knew that I wanted to get a brand new harness for the car that was specifically for my car, but I didn't necessarily know where I wanted to get it from. So what I did was I started sending emails to several companies asking questions. I think I emailed 5 or 6 companies asking questions about the harness for my 67 Nova, and all of them replied immediately and started answering my questions, but I began to notice something kind of funny happen. As I began to ask more and more questions and say, well, what about this type of sensor? Well, what do we move that to? I'm asking all sorts of really novice beginner questions, and something funny happened. About 80% of the people that I was emailing got tired of me asking all my silly questions. However, the folks at BP Automotive did not. These people's technical support and FAQ on their website is really what made the difference. Not just that, they were actually the lowest priced of all of the different harness manufacturers for this LS. I think their harness was like $550, something like that. So great price, really good technical service. They didn't get tired of me. They kept replying to my stupid questions and answering them. Really want to say thanks to the folks at BP Auto. Because they were so good, I'm going to put a link down below in the description. They carry all sorts of LS harnesses. I recommend checking them out, BP Auto. I already showed you the Dakota Digital Gauges that came in, but what I haven't showed you, our steering column. I've got a Flaming River steering column, and I've done something a little different. Do you realize what the end of that column looks like compared to a normal column? That's because that item right there, I don't have a spare hand, is the quick disconnect. I intend to run a quick disconnect steering wheel in this car so that I can pull the steering wheel off, have 100% confidence no one is ever going to steal it, as well as it's really just cool to pull your steering wheel off like a race car, hang it up, on the roll cage, and all of a sudden gain some extra ability to work around under the dash because the steering wheel is not in the way. I decided to go with their programmable keyless ignition system. This is an RFID ignition system, and the reason that I wanted to do this is because this means the car will not have a key. Kind of the central theme for this Nova is comfortable race car. I want it to be a street car that has a lot of racing-inspired feel to it, but it also has to be comfortable. Well, race cars don't use keys, so I decided to do one of these systems here so that you just hop in the car, press a button, and off you go. I picked up all of the linkage that I needed from Flaming River, stainless steel UV joints, the list goes on and on. I'm going to put a link down below to Flaming River's website. They basically have steering components and everything in the world you could ever dream of for building a steering system on a muscle car, classic hot rod, whatever. Check them out, Flaming River. One of the other things I want to show you that I did for the shop this week that was pretty cool, you probably didn't notice all the little female anchors that were sitting on the table in the beginning of this video. The reason for those little female anchors is because, think of it this way, a lot of times when I've got my car, my Nova, out in the driveway, especially if it's on the frame jig, getting it up the hill to come up into the shop is really, really difficult. Trying to push it requires 2 men, and even then, it's asking to pull a groin muscle to do it with 2 men. So I came up with an idea. I bought some of these anchors. I installed them into the concrete all throughout my shop. I've got one of these little worn winches that you see here, but the issue that I've ran into is that I have nowhere to hook my worn winch so that I can attach to a car out in the driveway and pull it into the shop. Well, I installed a bunch of those female anchors. I built a little anchor point that you see right here, and whenever I need to pull something in the shop, all I do is thread this thing in here. You get the idea. And then I've got anchor points in the concrete to get the car pulled up in here. So they start off, there's one right by the door, and then about every 5 feet there's another anchor point. The cable on that little winch right there is not terribly long, and so I wanted to give myself several anchor points, but I installed those into the floor. I'm excited about that. Hopefully the next time I go to try and roll that Nova into the shop, I don't kill myself. So cool addition to the shop this week. I'm also glad to report that I finally got the radiator in and installed into the car. I chose a Champion CC1826 DP radiator. I'll put a link in the description to that as well. This is the only radiator that I could find that stood any prayer of fitting inside this tiny little Nova that could cool up to 800 horsepower. I got it with their Spall dual electric fans as well as the shroud that you'll see there. One of the things that was pretty cool, I took a piece of 1 3/4 inch tubing, same thing I'm using on my roll cage, and I got just a big rubber bushing from the local auto parts store, modified it a little bit to where it was a good fit to go inside of this, and then there's a little piece that just sticks down right off the bottom of the radiator so that there's no actual metal to metal connection down here at the bottom, and came up with a cool little way of mounting the radiator. You could run one of these radiators in a stock core support, but just be aware you would definitely have to cut and modify and make the opening in the front of the car way larger, because it is just a massively bigger radiator than the stock one that came in the 67 Nova. That's not the only thing I'm excited about this week. I don't know if you notice or not, I'm sitting in the Camaro seat in the car. I finally got the first seat mounted in the car, and let me show you the bottom side of it. Came out really well. Alright, here's what I came up with for these seat mounts on this thing. I basically just used the same tubing that is the frame, 2 inch by 3 inch, and cut and modified my tubing to become seat mounts. Had to create some elongated holes, you can kind of see right there, because the fronts, they just mount up with elongated holes. Everything is still tacked in place. And then you can see back here, you've got bolts that hold it in the back. Now this seat mount was a different story. It was much more difficult making this one because you have this bar that attaches to the independent rear suspension, which I doubled into my seat mount here. So you can see it's really kind of a Frankenstein system here, in that it's both a suspension mount as well as a seat mount. But it came out really well. It's going to do the job fantastic. May look a little odd, but it's going to work great. One more new cool part to show you on the car before I let you go. Eddy Motorsports hinges for the car. You'll notice that I don't have the gas strut installed on these things. I had to send the struts back because they were too strong for the carbon fiber hood, so they're sending me a weaker strut that won't just make the whole hood go no, and just fly up real fast. But they make some really nice hinges. I decided to get the ones in the machined aluminum finish. You can kind of see what I mean there. It has no coating, anodizing, powder coating, anything. To me, that's just a cool race car look, so glad to have the hinges for the car. That's the last thing I got in. Lots of stuff. Okay, that's the end of my update for this week. Thank you again to Flaming River, Dakota Digital, and BP Auto. All three of those companies' technical expertise, customer service is really what made the difference. I'm new to this. I don't know what I'm doing. First car I've ever built. Thank you to those guys for answering all my stupid questions. If you want to make sure that you don't miss any of my update videos, click the subscribe button down below. I really appreciate it when folks subscribe to my channel. Turn on notifications if you want to make sure that you don't miss any of the videos of me uploading updates on the car. I would ask also, if you don't mind, click the thumbs up down below. Let YouTube know this is good content. Appreciate y'all watching. Have a great weekend. Y'all take care.